Hey guys, Mark here. I hope you're doing well. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to cover a Zippo lighter using a couple of Turk's head knots. Now this project is one that I recommend after you have tied at least a few Turk's head knots. This will make tying the knots a lot easier. All in all, this is not the hardest project out there, but it's not the easiest. With this said, let's take a look at the wrap, then make our own. So here is the Zippo lighter with the wrap up close. As you can see, I covered both the bottom as well as the top part. Now you can choose to just do the bottom part, or you can do both. It is a personal preference. This bottom knot is based on a 9-part 8-bite Turk's head, which I have doubled. The top part is a 5-part 8-bite Turk's head, and I made both knots using the same bite number, so they look about the same. With this said, let's move on to the setup, then start making our wrap. So here is the start of the show, the lighter. Now I think that they come in fairly standard sizes, but just to make sure I'm going to measure it up. Now, the width is about 1.5 inches. The thickness is about 1/2 inch. So I'm going to crunch some numbers and see what size of a mandrel I'm going to need to tie the covering knots. After calculating and experimenting with mandrel sizes, I decided on a mandrel about 1 inch and 3/8 in diameter. The mandrel is going to be used to tie the knot onto it, and then we're going to transfer it onto the lighter. A mandrel can be a stick, a piece of a pipe, or anything else. I'm going to be using a piece of a PVC pipe. Now the PVC pipe is going to be used to tie this bottom knot, so the 9-part 8-bite Turk's head. This top knot is going to be tied using a slightly different mandrel. Now let's take a look at the other tools that we're going to need. For tying the two knots, I'm going to be using 2 pieces of type 1 paracord. Now the bottom knot is larger and it's going to require a bit more cord. For the bottom knot, I'm going to be using about 9 feet of cord. This is a bit much, a bit more than we need, but it's better to be safe than sorry. Now the smaller knot is going to require a bit less cord. I'm going to be using about 6 feet. Again, this is a bit more than you're going to need, but it's best not to run out. For the other tools, a lacing needle is going to be used to help us tie the knots. It's not absolutely needed, but it makes things a lot easier. We're going to need something to cut our paracord with, and a lighter is going to be used in order to melt our paracord once we have cut it. Let's focus on tying this bottom part, so the 9-part 8-bite Turk's head. To start tying the 9-part 8-bite Turk's head, this is my setup. So I have my mandrel, again 1 inch and 3/8 wide. I have my paracord, and I have tucked one end under the rubber band, The other end sports a lacing needle. The paracord, so type 1 paracord, is about 9 feet long. Let's start tying. Take your paracord, wrap around your mandrel, pass over the standing end, wrap around again, and come here over this part on the right side. Then pick up your lacing needle and pass under, over to the left side. Then wrap around, coming to the standing end. Take your lacing needle and pass alongside the standing end, traveling under, over. Like this. Then, from right to left, pass over, under, over. Wrap around again, coming to the standing end. Take your lacing needle, and we're now going to split the two parallel strands that we set up. We're going to travel between them and do the opposite. So we're going to go over, under, and over. Like this. Then, from right to left, we're going to travel the opposite to this strand. So, under, over, under, over. And at this point we again come to the standing end. Again, double up the standing end. So we travel under, over, under, and over. Like this. From right side to the left, we're going to do the opposite of what this strand is doing. So we're going to travel over, under, and over. Like this. Then, we're going to again split the pair of parallel strands that we set up. We're going to travel between them, going over, under, and over. Then we're going to split the other pair, basically traveling the opposite to this strand. So, under, over, under, and over. Like this. We are again at the standing end, and we're going to double it for a final time. Under, over, under, over, under, over. Then from right to left, we're again going to go the opposite to this strand. So we're going to travel over, under, and over on the left side. we're going to again split the pair of parallel strands traveling between them. So we're going to travel over, under, over, under, over, under and over. Finally, we're going to split the final pair of parallel strands, so we're going to travel the opposite to this strand. So under, over, under, over, under, over, under and over. Now at this point, I came to the standing end. To finish up the knot, place your working end right next to it, going under one. And at this point, we have tied a 9-part 8-bite Turk's head. Before we move on, I highly recommend that you make sure that the knot looks consistent. So make sure it is even all around. I also recommend that you work in a tiny bit of your working or standing end just to loosen up the knot a bit. After loosening up the knot, I'm going to double it up. To do this, take your working end and simply follow the standing end all through the knot until you reach the working end again. So we already went under one, just like the standing end, then continue over, under, over, under, over, under, and over. Follow the standing end over the top, re-enter, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, like this. Simply continue this until you have doubled up your knot. After doubling up the knot, we come to the same spot where we started. So under one, right next to the standing end. At this point, again make sure that the knot looks consistent. So it should be pretty even all through the knot. Now what we're going to do is take our working end and feed it under the knot all the way to the right side. Like this. So I re-entered right where I came out, so at an under one, went under the knot and came out on the right side. This makes both ends a lot easier to trim once we have transferred the knot onto the lighter. Now remove it off of the mandrel. Remove the lacing needle. And now place it onto your lighter. So something like this. At this point, we're going to begin tightening up. We start at the standing end and we pull it in like this. Then gently go all through the knot until you come out of the working end. We're going to do this several times until the knot gets a nice and consistent look. After tightening up the knot, we're going to trim the ends and tuck them under the wrap. Like this. After tying the main wrap, we already have a nicely decorated lighter. I'm also going to show you how to add a secondary wrap here on top. So onto this part. Now, the second knot is going to be easier to tie, but we're going to need to do some preparation. We're not going to be using the same mandrel, but a slightly different one. The mandrel that we're going to be using is basically one with pins. This is going to make tying this second knot a lot easier and, well, more practical. There are other ways of tying this second knot, but I think that this is one of the easier ones. So, first off, I set up my mandrel. All this is a toilet paper roll with 8 pins at the top and 8 pins at the bottom. Since we're tying a 5-part 8-bite Turk's head, this makes sense. Each pin represents 1 bite. I have already placed a rubber band at the bottom to hold the standing end. At the center, I basically have a wine cork into which I have pinned my pins. Now you don't have to use this setup. For example, you can take a stick and simply place a few screws or pins into it. This is even easier. But well, to make things better and easier to see, I went with this setup. You can also see that I marked down each of the pins. So I have A1, B1, A2, B2, A3, B3, and so on, all the way to A8 and B8. So 8 pins top and bottom. With this setup prepared, let's start tying. For those familiar with working with pins, now a run list will appear. It is fairly straightforward and it was designed using the Advanced Grid Maker. It is an excellent app for designing Turk's head knots. For those that would like a practical demonstration of tying, let's begin. So as you can see, I have tucked my paracord under the rubber band right next to A1. On the other end of my paracord, I have a lacing needle. I'm now going to start tying. From A1, we're going to move to B3. Like this. From B3, we're going to move to A6. Like this. From A6, we're going to travel to B8. From B8, we're going to travel all the way to A3. Now to travel to A3, we're going to need to pass under the standing hand. Like this. Now from A3, we're going to move to B5. Again, we're going to need to move under one strand of paracord. Like this. Now from B5, we're going to move to A8, again running under one strand of paracord. Like this. Now from A8, we're going to travel to B2, once again traveling under one strand of paracord. Like this. Now from B2, we're going to move all the way to A5, but this time we're going to have to travel under two strands of paracord. So all the way to A5. From A5, we're going to move to B7, again traveling under two strands. Like this. From B7, we're going to move all the way to A2, traveling under two strands and over the standing hand, all the way to A2. Like this. Now from A2, we're going to travel to B4, again traveling under 2 and over 1. Like this. Now from B4, we are again going to travel to the left side, going to A7. Again, under 2 and over 1. From A7, we're going to move to B1. Again, under 2, over 1. Now from B1, we're going to travel all the way to A4, traveling under, over, under, over, to A4. From A4, we're going to move to B6. Again in the same sequence. So, under 1, over 1, under 1, over 1. And finally, our final pass. From B6 to A1. Under 1, over 1, under 1, over 1. like this. Now place your working end right next to the standing end and you have tied a single pass of the 5-part 8-byte Turk's head. We're now going to double it up, so following the standing end using our working end. So we already went under one, then over under, just like in the previous knot. Like this. Again, under over, under over. So just keep following the standing end until you reach the standing end once more. After doubling up the knot, your working end should come to the standing end and the first pass of the working end. So we traveled under one right next to the standing end. What I'm going to do now is remove my knot off of this mandrel and place it on my previous mandrel, just to tighten it up before I transfer it onto my lighter. So transfer the knot onto the smaller mandrel and retighten the knot. After retightening our Turk's head knot, we're going to prepare it so that we can transfer it onto the lighter. So where the working end is coming out, so under one, then out, we're going to re-enter the knot, go under it, and exit on the right side. Like this. Let's transfer the knot onto the lighter. Like this. Again, we're going to start our tightening by pulling in our hand into the knot like this, so that only a small part shows. Then start pulling the slack out of the knot and finally out of the working end. So all we're going to do is gradually tighten up this Turk's head knot. I'm going to do 2, maybe 3 tightenings before I get my final version. After retightening the knot onto the lighter, again trim the end and then tuck it back in under the wrap. Like this. And with this, our wrap is complete. A 2-part wrap, which is a nice looking way of decorating a Zippo lighter. So guys, at this point we came to the end of this video. I hope that this tutorial wasn't terribly hard to follow and that you were able to make a nice looking wrap for your Zippo lighter. Thank you very much for joining me and I hope to see you next time.